high-level meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons at the United Nations is currently underway. The participation of Chile's native people in the life of the country continues to be relegated. The Turkish Foreign Minister criticized EU leaders for their continued references to possible sanctions against Ankara. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Laura Palmeiro. This Friday, the high-level meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons at the United Nations is currently underway. This high-level plenary meeting of the General Assembly aims to advocate for resuming dialogue and negotiations for nuclear arms control and disarmament, and to consider how states can return to a common path to nuclear disarmament. The meeting also seeks to articulate solutions for the elimination of nuclear weapons and highlights the need for renewed engagement for building sustainable peace and security for all. The work of the high-level meeting will provide an opportunity to raise awareness of the threat posed by humanity by nuclear weapons and the necessity for their total elimination in order to mobilize international efforts towards achieving the goal of nuclear weapon-free world. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stated in his opening remarks that the world continues to live in the shadows of nuclear catastrophe.
It has been a priority of the United Nations since the very beginning of the organization's existence. Yet, 75 years since the founding of the United Nations and since the horrific bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world continues to live in the shadow of nuclear catastrophe. Some states view nuclear weapons as vital to their national security and survival. But the elimination of nuclear weapons is vital to something beyond the fate of any single state, the survival of life on this planet. It is imperative that the Russian Federation and the United States of America extend without delay the New START Treaty for the duration of 5 years. For the sake of all of our security, the world must return to a common path towards nuclear disarmament. Ultimately, however, the only way to completely eliminate nuclear risk is to completely eliminate nuclear weapons. The Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons remains the cornerstone of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime.
During the high-level meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, said that as long as nuclear weapons exist, humankind's survival will always be threatened.
For as long as nuclear weapons exist, humankind will continue to face the threat of catastrophe. A selective focus on non-proliferation measures and the lack of progress on nuclear disarmament undermine this bargain. As the only country that has voluntarily abandoned nuclear weapons, South Africa remains deeply concerned that the nuclear disarmament obligations under Article 6 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty remain unfulfilled. The only guarantee we have that nuclear weapons will never be used is their total elimination and the legally binding assurance that they will never again be produced.
Speaking at the high-level meeting to commemorate and promote the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, called on all member states to sign and ratify the TPNW.
Newly formed United Nations, in its very first resolution, the General Assembly established nuclear disarmament as one of its priority areas. 75 years later, in 2020, at this high-level plenary meeting to commemorate and promote International Day for the total elimination of nuclear weapons, this goal still eludes the international community. My country was proudly in the conference stall as the General Assembly passed the historic treaty for the Total Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, in 2017. This treaty will fill the legal gap that currently exists regarding the prohibition and elimination of nuclear weapons, including the general regulation and prohibition against possession, use, development, production, stockpiling, and transfer of such weapons. Antigua and Barbuda ratified the treaty in 2019, and I call upon all member states to sign and ratify the TPNW. At the time of this recording, we are 5 ratifications away from the treaty coming into force. That nuclear weapons have no utility in today's world. They are not deterrents, but rather cultivate a state of insecurity and false defensiveness that only increases the chances of proliferation with a devastating impact on all of us.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The participation of Chile's native people in the life of the country continues to be relegated, despite broad sectors' calls for the incorporation into decision-maker. In this regard, representatives of the native community that make up the Citizens Network ask Congress not to delay any longer the discussion of the seats reserved for native people, with a view to the constitutional process, which will begin just in 24 days, with a celebration of the historic plebiscite for a new constitution. The victory of the approval is almost certain, and in the case of the indigenous people, should be included among the delegates who will form the mechanism that will be approved by the drafting of the new fundamental law. A bill to guarantee indigenous participation was approved, although the discussion of its articles in particular is pending in the Senate Constitution Commission. Chile's mining sector, the most important in the country's economy, is expected to receive investments worth over $74,000 billion in the next decade. The Chilean Copper Commission presented the registry investment, which contains 49 projects, 5 more than in the similar report in 2019, as well as $1.5 billion more. Of the new projects, 89% are related to copper mining, as well as 6 in gold extraction, 2 in iron, 5 in lithium, and 1 in industrial minerals. Mining minister said that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a strong impact on the economy, jobs and plans, the mining sector has remained an engine of the reactivation. The Brazilian National Agency of Sanitary Surveillance stated the first examination process of a vaccine against COVID-19 as a way to accelerate the registration method. The regulatory agency informed that it received data from Anglo-Swedish company AstraZeneca, which develops the drug in partnership with Oxford University. The agency also notes that it approved the evaluation of the first data package of the vaccine that refers to non-clinical studies. However, such a start does not mean the conclusion can be reached on the quality, safety, and efficacy of the vaccine, as many elements still remain to be examined. According to this agency, the objective of the measure is to provide as soon as possible access to vaccines of proven quality against a pathogen that has killed more than 144,000 people in the country so far. Judge Rosa Weber of the Supreme Federal Court of Brazil requested information from the Minister of the Environment, Ricardo Salles, on actions against the protection of mangroves. The National Environment Council, an advisory body of the portfolio headed by Salles, on Monday revoked solutions that guaranteed, among other barriers, restrictions on deforestation and the occupation of environmental preservation areas, such as mangroves and sandbanks. Such decision was criticized and generated a series of reactions, and the Federal Justice of Rio de Janeiro suspended the provision of CONOMA. In view of the evident risk of irrecoverable damage to the environment, I defer the anticipation of the effects of the guardianship to suspend the effects of the revocation evaluated at the ordinary meeting of CONOMA, wrote Federal Judge Maria Amelia Almeida Senos. Cuban Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Cabrizas' visit to Russia reinforces the strategic nature of the ties between both countries, economic cooperation and coordination of positions in the international arena, diplomatic sources said in Moscow. During an almost 10 days visit, the Cuban Deputy Prime Minister met with executives of over 30 companies related to crucial areas for Cuba's economic development plan until 2030 and for mutual cooperation between the two countries. During his last day in Russia, Cabrizas held a meeting with the State Secretary and Deputy Transport Minister Dmitry Sherev, with whom he analyzed the state of relations in railway, automotive and maritime transportation. Cabrizas also met with parliamentary leaders, ministers and leaders of political parties. The visit strengthened the excellent state of the bilateral political ties and reiterated the common positions in defense of multilateralism, international law, justice and cooperation between countries. Canada's government reintroduced a bill on Thursday to ban LGTB conversion therapy for children and adults. In the legislation is passed, the government says that it will make Canada's laws on conversion therapy the most progressive and comprehensive in the world. The Minister of Justice, David Lametti, and the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion, Anjut Bardish Shagar, brought back the amendment to the Criminal Code initially introduced in March, but did not move forward as the Parliament shut down sessions because of the COVID-19. The legislation establishes a range of offences from advertising conversion therapy services to taking a minor out of Canada to undergo the therapy abroad. Although several activists warn that the religious context and families might be difficult to accept the practice, the legislation is a milestone as it will allow the elimination of conversion therapy inside the healthcare system. United States President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for COVID-19, the president tweeted early on Friday. Trump's positive test comes just hours after the White House announced that senior aide Hope Hicks came down with the virus after traveling with the president several times this week. Trump is 74 years old, putting him at higher risk of serious complications from a virus that has now killed more than 200,000 people in the United States. Trump tweeted that he and the First Lady will start a quarantine and recovery process immediately. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Turkish Foreign Minister criticized EU leaders on Friday for their continued references to possible sanctions against Ankara as the conflict in the eastern Mediterranean simmers on. The outcome of the EU summit, which ended in Brussels on Friday, showed that EU-Turkey relations had been taken hostage by Greece and Cyprus, according to Turkish diplomats. It is not constructive to continue the use of language of sanctions, the Turkish foreign minister said in a statement. Ankara is at loggerheads by both Greece and Cyprus over offshore energy rights and maritime borders in the Mediterranean region. At the summit, EU leaders assured Cyprus they will review Turkey's behavior in December, warning that sanctions will be imposed against Ankara and Venice provocations have not stopped as the country island withdrew its opposition to sanctions on Belarus. And also, Turkey's government is being accused of hiding the true extent of the country's coronavirus outbreak after the country's health minister revealed that daily COVID-19 figures published by his ministry reflect only patients with symptoms and not all positive cases. Minister Frederic Koca had acknowledged during a news conference late on Wednesday that since July 29th, Turkey has been reporting the number of patients being cared for hospitals or at their homes. The count did not include asymptomatic positive cases, he said, ignoring a question about the number of new positive coronavirus cases per day, a key indicator of where the outbreak is headed in any country. The revelation led to an outcry on social media, with people calling on the government to reveal the true spread of the coronavirus among the population of 83 million people. On Friday, the spokesman of the Armenian Ministry of Defense said the numerous wounded and lots of destruction were caused by the bombing of the Stepanakert, capital of Nagorno-Karabakh. The Armenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs declared its readiness to cooperate with the OSCE Minsk group to achieve a ceasefire in the region. The Armenian Foreign Minister reaffirmed Yerevan's condemnation at the threats for use of force by Azerbaijan and the direct involvement of Turkey in the hostilities against Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia said to be ready to work with the OSCE Minsk group co-share countries to re-establish a ceasefire regime based on 1994-1995 agreements. On Thursday, the leaders of Russia and the United States and France, co-share countries of the Minsk group, called on Baku to Yerevan to immediately end hostilities in Karabakh and resume negotiations without preconditions. Sexual abuse allegations involving United Nations agency staff in Democratic Republic of the Congo are very, very painful, says Jens Laerke, a spokesman of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. UNICEF became the third UN agency to launch an internal inquiry into sexual abuse of women in the Democratic Republic of Congo, promising serious consequences for any culprits. The Children's Fund said in a statement it was appealed that people who identify as UNICEF workers have reportedly committed abuse against vulnerable women in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It was not immediately clear how many UNICEF employees had been accused. Lebanon surpassed on Friday 40,000 COVID-19 infections after over 1,000 cases were detected in the last 24 hours. 7 people died in the virus in the day, totaling 367 deaths since the first case emerged on February 21st, the Ministry of Health informed. Over 12,000 PCR tests were made with a 9.9% rate. This figure confirms an unstoppable increase since the August 4 explosion in the Beirut port. Of the 40,800 COVID-19 cases, only 17,500 have recovered from the disease. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.